here today with Dave Settles, another Arizona drag racing legend, and also a member of the Arizona Drag Racing Hall of Fame. Also, I found out, a member of the Division 4 Drag Racing Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's a well-known guy from Arizona. Has moved on and ran some top fuel vehicles and built a lot of good hot rod parts and such. But we're lucky we could catch up. Dave's in town this weekend for the Arizona Drag Racer Reunion, and this is something I've been looking forward to get you in, Dave. Well, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, where are you originally from?
I was born in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, one block away from the Bandemere family. So I knew the Bandemers when I was old enough to talk. And they had, of course, the speed shop, and they had a chassis dyno there at their house.
Right.
And everything, but nobody knew what a chassis dyno was. And his son, John, and my oldest brother, Stan, played high school basketball at Wheat Ridge High School. They were on the varsity team. And so I go way back with
Well, the Bandemers were way more than just a drag strip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely performance people, and
Yeah.
they're racers, and did a lot for the Denver area and such. And what a beautiful facility that ended up being.
Well, I was just a kid growing up there, and the old man bought that property in Morrison, and he's out there on that bulldozer and everything, grading it and doing this. And then everybody thought he was kind of semi-nuts, and then it just blossomed into this mega racetrack facility.
Absolutely.
It was cool.
The first time we raced it in the 80s, we went for the Mile End Nationals racing comp, and the pits were all below the track back then, before they put all the big cool grandstands in.
Yeah.
They moved the pits to the top side, and the bad thing is when it would rain, it would flood the pits out. It was like a mud pit, but had a great time.
Yeah.
And then to go back to see what it really became, and there's nothing like shooting under, driving out from underneath the tower, from the staging lanes to pull out to go racing and pull out on the drag strip. It was a great grand facility, and it's kind of sad to see it gone.
It's super. I expected it to be sold way before it did.
Well,
But they were nipping around at their heels and everything, trying to get them to sell it years ago.
prime real
Oh,
estate.
yeah,
And
yeah, very prime.
real close on the sides from the Red Rocks and all that. It's just what a beautiful area. But so that's where you grew up.
Yeah, I left and the family moved to Phoenix. My dad's health was bad, and doctor said you need to get to a drier environment. So I started 8th grade in grade school down here in Phoenix.
What high school did you go to?
Phoenix Central High.
Okay, you were a Bobcat.
Yes,
There
I
you go.
was.
I see.
You've been around
I've been
more.
around. Yeah. We were Spartans. We went to Camelback. So we're that
All,
other. Yeah.
all my good buddies were at Camelback.
Yeah. Well, that's where the cool kids were.
Yeah, well, 12th Street segregated, or 16th, I'm
16th,
sorry.
yeah.
And if you lived west of 16th, you went to Central. East, you went to Camelback, as I recall.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
So, and
Yeah.
they used to kick our ass every year in football.
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, Central actually had the good football team, and they kicked our ass. So that makes you feel.
They
better.
won state when I went back one time, and they were playing. I forget who they played, but they won the state deal. But they certainly weren't in that league when I went to school.
No. It's come a long ways to the
Yeah.
whole thing, but it was good memories. So, how did you first where'd you find a passion for cars?
Where'd I what?
Where'd you find your passion for cars?
Oh, I grew up around my older brothers, John, who's passed, and Stan's still alive, and he had a dragster, and John always had hot rods. And so I was around it from when I was a little kid, and I read drag news voraciously. And we'd go down like every week to Go Lightly Speed Shop in Denver, and his son ended up running a top fuel car. But the old man sold hard parts out of this old beat up building and everything, and I'd get a copy of Drag News, and I wore everybody out.
That was still the best publication.
It was
drag
great.
ra- I mean,
Yeah.
it was like with Friendly Fran and all the different articles in it,
Yeah.
and there was nothing's been like that since.
No,
Even the internet hasn't hit that.
I've said the same thing, that I really like drag news, and I used to call National Dragster at the NHRA deal, I called it Pravda.
The People's Paper.
Yeah, the communist deal, that wasn't anything in there that NHRA didn't want printed.
Right.
Drag news didn't care, they printed
No,
everything.
because they covered all the
They
sanctioning
were,
bodies and
they were a journalistic entity, I guess.
No, I remember, going down to the Goosey Speed Shop and waiting to come out. Then later on, when I had my own speed shop, and it went away. And then I had to sell National Dragsters. But it's the same thing at that time. People would come in weekly to buy their National Dragster.
I have a lot of friends that went through the NHRA regime.
Oh yeah, I bet you do.
David Dinsmore.
Oh, yeah.
And, oh hell, he ended up owning the Rockingham track. I'll think of his name in a minute. I used to see him all the time racing, because we raced for him.
Well, didn't Densmore go on to do marketing and stuff for people, or?
Yeah, in fact, I talked to him today.
I think he worked with Forrest for a while on some.
He's worked for everybody.
Right.
Force, Bernstein,
Yeah.
Raymond Beadle,
Yep.
Billy Meyer. He's covered them all.
But that's kind of people that help build drag racing.
Yeah.
And, all that stuff really helped the drag racing grow. So you got to finish, went to high school, and when was the first time you went down a drag strip, driving that car?
My brother John and I, he was older than me, about 6 years or so, so I didn't get to hang with him when I was young, but when I got into high school, we started hanging out, and we wanted to build a gas coupe and sedan. And we went to Bakersfield my junior year. I was still 16, but barely. And to watch the March meet. That was it back then. And one of his buddies and one of my buddies, there were 4 of us, and we drove over there, and we were sitting in them stands, and there must have been 100 top fuel cars coming. 2 would be on the track,
They're
2
lining
would
up
be
all-
pushing
yeah.
up, pushing down, and they didn't do burnouts or anything back then. And they'd take off, and the couple make the turn and come up there and stay. And then this went on for, I don't know how long.
Well,
All you could smell is nitromethane and Goodyear or Watertown fallout. That's the smoke off the tires, the little black particles.
the dust, yeah.
And that's all you could smell.
Well, I remember back in the day when NHRA really, they had multiple qualifying sessions, and if you could be the first, you could come around and be the last, as long as you made it in line.
Well, they weren't organized
Yeah,
at all.
But the thing is, they would do laps to qualifying, and.
Yeah, but we were sitting in them stands, and after all of these, there's a lot of these cars, and I think of my brother, I remember it like it's yesterday. I said, are you thinking what I'm thinking? He says, yeah, fuck that gas coupe and sedan. And we got back home and started planning on building a little dragster. And it took till I graduated from high school, and ended up with a chassis that was a top fuel dragster that Chauvin Evans had built for Jim Stewart. It's ironic how it all ended up. And we put an injected Chevrolet in it and ran nitro. They called them junior fuelers back then.
Yeah.
301 cubic inches or whatever it was. And I was 19 when I started racing. We raced at the old Mel Larson track.
Mel Larson's, and so we talked to Bones about the lack of gassers here, but back in the day, there's a lot of junior fuelers here.
But there ended up being some pretty good gas cars here.
After a while.
Yeah,
But
it took a while.
when I first started going to the races, there really seemed a lot of junior fuelers out there.
Yeah.
And then there was always a discussion, well, that guy's cheating, he's got a bigger engine there.
Yeah,
And,
nobody, I won't say hardly anybody cheated, but most everybody did, a little bit.
What was the saying? It's not what the rule book says, it's what it doesn't say. And that's not considered cheating.
But
Like Smokey Unick said that.
I think they were running, Bones, they were running 8th mile there.
Yeah.
when we
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
Yeah, because the track got pretty bad.
Or,
There were cows wandering off down in the, quarter mile would have
You
been
ran-
We raced
quite
there in
an
the eighties.
adventure.
We raced there in the eighties with my comp car, which we ran B dragster, C dragster. So it was a little 7-second car. There were still cows in the top end. You know?
that's what he,
Well, they redid it along the way, and we test top fuel cars later on out there.
Uh-huh.
Speed World, I think it was
Yeah.
called.
yeah.
No, it became
It actually
a great track.
was a decent facility.
Yes.
But I was 19, I guess, and Bones had his top fuel car out there and
Under
asked me
his
to
driver.
asked me to drive it, and I didn't have the sense to say no, so I went ahead and
We went down to
slipped in
Tucson,
there.
ran
and
195.
We went to
first-
Tucson the
first trip
first
down
time, the old Tucson track,
Right.
They ran 199 or 195?
99.
99, yes, I
Yeah.
thought. We only had 18 over on the board, too.
So you were bitten big time by the dragsters and going fast. So
Oh, yeah,
What-
I decided I liked it a lot.
the
And I drove for Bones all the way through mechanical engineering school at ASU.
so
And then I went to Texas when I graduated.
so that was the deal. I knew you were here and you moved to Texas, but left a big imprint here. People, a lot of friends. Still tell you a lot of stories about you. The
Well,
legend, the man, the myth, the legend.
So, some are true, some aren't.
Well, that's why you're here. You have a chance to
what
tell
the
the
heck.
story or create the story, one or the other, right?
Well, we've always said a good story only requires 2% truth content. You
Well,
embellish the rest.
That's right. So, there you go.
Yeah.
What
But,
do they say?
yeah,
90% of statistics are made up on the spot, or is it 93? I can't remember. So you moved to Texas in the Dallas area.
I went to Texas Instruments out of school.
They were big back then. That was a huge
And
deal.
I got down there, and Larry Meyer, who's from here,
Mhm.
he got there a year ahead of me, and he's at Texas Instruments. And we had a circuit out there of injected nitro cars, and in '71 they started it, and so we got a chassis from Ben Griffin. He just actually let us use it, which was unbelievable. And I had a motor, and is an injected 354, and we raced that circuit. It's all around the Division 4 area, and it was fun. Some of the tracks we ran on, you wouldn't want to drive your passenger car down, and some were pretty nice. It just is a mixed bag, and
Well, that's why I can seem to remember over the years that the Division 4, the Southwest people of, they consider the Southwest superchargers, the different classes that people would have different race crews. They'd all come together, and there are enough cars to put on some good shows.
yeah, it's a pretty good division, really.
So, how did that lead into John?
Well-
You kept moving up the ladder.
I raced again an A-Fuel dragster in '72, but it was with a guy named Don Haley, and I graduated to a late model Chrysler motor. I had all the stuff. I put together the motor. We put it in his chassis. He had a 354 Chrysler in a chassis that they'd built themselves, and it was a decent car. And so I drove that, and then about mid-year, the Carroll brothers contacted me, because you see everybody around there, and they're from Irving, which is a suburb of Dallas, and asked me to drive it, and I said sure. And so I finished out that year, and in '73 we campaigned quite a bit in the Division 4 area. Went to a few national events. We won the division championship that year, and Candies and Hughes and all them were in the same division, so it wasn't no small time feat.
No.
You'd see some pretty good
Well,
cars.
and back then there was enough cars they could have to add a division
Yeah,
race.
The division races
Yeah.
were good for the most part, and then Paul Candies asked me to drive for him, so I did that in '74 and '75.
I've never had the chance to meet him, but I always heard
He was
great things about the man.
He was a class individual and really, really cool.
But that's the great thing about a partnership, because there's been a lot of great partnerships where nobody want to talk to the one guy, but it was a brother or a partner that they all talk to the other, so it was okay. So always you gotta have Have somebody better than you when you
Leonard was similar to Amato and Timmy Richards. You know, Candice thought he just couldn't race a car without Leonard Hughes, analogous to Timmy Richards and Joe Amato. Well, they both found out later on in life, yeah, we can race
Force and coil and all
without
that.
these arrogant shitheads.
Well-
and life goes on.
I remember the Candice top fuel car, and you won a national event.
Yeah, Gainesville.
And
We
then
were
you
running
runner-up
up for
in
the
Indy?
championship in '74.
Oh, the Super Nationals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, we're in points also.
Oh,
They
yeah.
started doing the points in '74.
That was,
So, you know, they compiled season-long points for the championship.
so,
So we were second. We should have won the championship, but we didn't.
so,
I won't get into that.
well, that's, okay. Read between the lines. You drove, but you also tuned for people.
Well, I still had an A-fuel dragster in the garage.
Right.
And so in '75, I built a rear engine car and ran a little bit and put some local drivers in if I was doing something else or whatever. In '76, I continued running, but I drove it myself. And we won Indy that year. And I won we won Indy, and then '77 we won the championship.
Is that when Pro Comp was coming along about that time?
Yeah, you'd see alcohol funny cars, alcohol dragsters, A-fuel dragsters. I think even some Altereds were thrown in there. But most all the cars there were alcohol dragsters. You know, I won Pomona in '77, the first race of the year. And there were 2 A-fuel dragsters there out of all that entire field. And they were both in the finals, me and Gene Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gene Adams, what a great history
and
there.
Lucas was driving.
Yeah.
And it was, we kid about it. When I see Gene, he's still alive, but I haven't seen him in quite a few years. I'd see him at Bonneville every once in a while. You know, we had a good chuckle about that, about it was impossible for an A-fuel dragster to compete with the alcohol cars.
Yeah, right. Look
It
what-
wasn't impossible.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but it
Well,
wasn't impossible.
Our friend Mark Niver certainly did well with an A-fuel
He did
dragster.
real good.
Kind of like showed people how to do it.
Well, he was in a league of his own as far as being able to build stuff and everything.
Yeah, well, not many like him. We
No.
all learned, and
No.
somebody we all deeply miss. You know, he's a great guy. So you also got involved with fuel systems, so building fuel pumps for
Yeah, I
people?
was interested all along. When the first fuel flow bench we built, we put on Larry Meyer Bridgeport in his shop, and I rigged up a bunch of stuff to flow a pump. And I'd bring a strobe attack. It would isolate the RPM on down to one count, from work. And they didn't know I borrowed it, but I did. And
For scientific reasons.
yeah, and so I got RPM data, and then I had a flow meter. They call them the bobbing float. It was a mass flow meter, as opposed to the turbine meters we use nowadays. And but it'd give you a reading of gallons per minute, and that started it all. And then I started building them specifically dedicated to do that job. And I don't know how many of them I've built, but a lot.
So did you still do any of that at all, or is
Yeah,
that?
I still have call a company Flow Dynamics.
Okay.
And I'll give you a card when it's out of my vehicle. But yeah, I started building fuel pumps. They call them the nuclear pumps in
Okay.
1990.
Right.
And it was just, it was a good match. I was
All the
always-
time the mags came along, got better, they could fire.
Well, I begged Hilburn to build big pumps in 1980.
Right.
And I said, they'll line up outside of your building to buy them. And Enriquez said, nah, we're not interested.
What's amazing on people over the years didn't think that an engine could handle that much fuel. It's like, you know, and what you find out, what it really can do is this.
And David Rear and Morrison fame,
Oh, yeah.
Joe Stalker, excellent racer.
Yep.
They did stuff for me, and he called them liquid motors. And back then, they were nothing like they are now. Now the fuel pumps are 110, 120 gallons a minute. And so it's hard to imagine they'll drain 2 barrels of fuel in a minute, but they will.
That's crazy. So they only have to really pump hard for 3-4 seconds, right?
No.
Well, when they're racing, you know, they're wide open throttle. But the
WFO, wide fucking open.
here you go. So you tune for some people. I think you work with Larry Meyer and other, but there's something prestigious. Another prestigious award I read about you received is called the Anvil Award.
Oh, Mike Guger started that. And we picked on crew chiefs. And if you fucked up real bad, you got the Anvil Award
It was for
at the next
perpetual?
race.
Okay.
And I got the first one.
So the Anvil was basically given to you because you could screw up something.
Oh, yeah. No matter how big you were, you could get the Anvil.
I would imagine that some people had a good sense of humor about it, and other people probably were a little bit.
Oh, and
Upset to get it.
some of them pompous assholes were scared to death of it.
You see the crowd walking towards them, and
Yeah, I thought it was great.
yeah,
That's just me.
it took on a life of its own. I mean,
Yeah, it did. It was big for a couple of years, and then, everything goes away.
Well, I was reading that it was so great that even when it came time to give it out, everybody just dropped what they're doing on their cars and they all walked down as a group.
We had a little contingent of racers, not only the crew chiefs and drivers, but the crew guys, and it was a big crowd, so it did well for a couple of seasons.
That's good. That's classic. I didn't know about it. Bill Gusick shared the link to that story with me, and I said, I never knew that. That's really cool. And so was your name stamped on there somewhere? Or?
I can't recall.
Yeah.
Probably was, but I wish I could remember, but I don't.
No, that's okay.
It was an Anvil replica. I don't know where they come up with it, but they did.
Yeah, if you just Google Dave Settle's Anvil Award.
Well, I wasn't part of the founders.
No, but you come up in the story.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was the first recipient.
Yes. Yeah.
An honor to be sure.
Yeah. And try not to win too much.
No, I only won it that one time.
It sounds like everything that I've heard and known about you is absolutely the truth. You love life.
Well, we had a good time. You're a fool if you don't have a good time.
Yeah.
You really are.
Well, there's a lot of waiting in
guys
drag
I
racing.
often wondered why they were doing anything.
Well, there's a lot of waiting and standing around in drag racing, and if you're not having you can't find something else to have a good time, then you're in the wrong place.
You're right about that.
When was the last time you drove?
It was an eventful affair. We built the chassis, and I built the motor and tuned it, and for Fisher's Fever out of Riverside, California. And it had a hand-built rear end, and my partner in the chassis deal didn't weld the inside of the tube, and he just welded the outside. And I was running Shirley in the semifinals, and it was shaking real bad, but that was before you could shake the tires and smoke them. Now if they rattle a tire a little bit,
They're done.
Strike them. But back then you could get through it.
You could drive through
couldn't
the
see
shake.
your hand in front of your face, but you
Right.
could still get through it. And it shook the left rear wheel off of the car down the track, and it was quite exciting. And luckily, it had a deep pan on it. It didn't have a dry sump, had a deep wet sump. And I rode down to the rest of the way on the pan and the right rear wheel. And about the time I'd just steer against it. About the time it was ready to roll over, then I'd steer the other way. I just finally came to a stop on the track. I never hit a guardrail in my life, but I got close to crashing that one.
But people were able to read both sides of the car at times, right?
Yeah, it was something else.
The,
It was a bad way to lose, because I think I'd have won the race, but anyway.
the tire shake back in the day was, and what causes tire shake? Too much clutch, not enough clutch, too much fuel, not enough fuel, too much spark, not enough fuel.
Garland's had him a list,
Yeah.
and he went
Yeah.
through a line item on everything. What
Too much
caused-
horsepower, not enough
Yeah,
horsepower.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was about 20 things.
Yeah, that was classic.
What it is something has to give, and that's what it boils down to.
Well-
If everything is hooked up, something's gonna give.
So you,
So you had to dissipate a lot of the energy through the clutch. The tires need to be rotating about 5%, 3 to 5% of the time. And like I say, they had to move a little bit, but not too much, then they smoked the tires.
well,
So-
yeah, you're never 100% locked up with the clutch, right? It's
Well,
always
yeah,
something,
you are,
Yeah,
down
but-
track.
But down track, but not,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, early on you're not.
Right.
No, and that's how they ended up sawing cars apart. Garland's being one of the guys, and, because they were slipping the clutch too much. It was before we had data acquisition on the cars and things like that. We really didn't know what anything was doing to anything.
So-
You just did it.
So your work at TI, did it help you? Did you have any of your own data acquisition stuff you tried to develop or work with?
I did later on. At TI, I'm an old gearhead. It wasn't for me, but I stuck it out for 5 or 6 years. And, but the need to know what the cars were doing stuck with me, and finally put a system together in the mid-'80s. And it was my own deal. And then I ended up with a pretty sophisticated deal. I had a guy that wrote the software, because I wanted to do that like I wanted to have bigger ears or something, you know? It just didn't interest me.
Do it for me, yeah.
Yeah, just tell me how it works.
Right.
And I didn't have a lot of customers, but the ones I had were Amato, Frank Bradley,
The beard.
Lee Beard,
Yeah.
Billy Meyer, Prudhomme. Prudhomme was one of my customers. And this was before the laptop craze, so, you know, it wasn't an easy deal hooking up a computer to your data system. And I actually used an Atari. And because everything else was too big, a desktop computer back then was huge.
Right.
And you just didn't have room in the trailer to do it. Now, you know, a little tiny laptop does
Well,
everything.
now the trailers have engineer rooms and crew chief
Well,
rooms. and-
they get,
Yeah, they have all
they've
that
got it they carried away, got it carried away a little bit, but it's the cost of
Well,
doing business.
that was all that all those Texas people saying we can do bigger and better
Well,
trailers.
I actually knew a guy in my department at TI that it got me interested in Dr. Van Leuvenay. He's a PhD in electronics and everything, and they had a little gas dragster, and I was driving Top Fuel at the time, and we talked about that, and he says, it can easily be done, what you're talking about doing. I said, well, what about the packaging? And he said, well, we'll make the circuit boards. I said, well, yeah, I get that, because my first job was circuit board engineering, you know, and we made all the circuit boards for TI worldwide there.
So you took something that was this big, made it this big,
Yeah.
and now this is this big.
Yeah.
Big as my Apple Watch.
Yeah, that's right. And so he got me interested in it, but it took me over 10 years to where I finally bit the bullet and did it.
With a big change to racing though.
Well,
You know, there's a lot of things in engineering.
It increased the technology level quite a bit.
There's a lot of things that engineering brought to racing,
Mhm.
just as people like to badmouth the government and the EPA and the emissions devices on cars, but what that actually did, all the computerization, and it actually let's have cars now off the showroom floor, they'll run 9 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's all stuff because if they didn't have it, there'd been no drive to create this information system and collect the data and make it work efficient.
And that's exactly correct.
So I mean, that's a fantastic step in drag racing.
Yeah.
And we got a friend out in west side of town, him and his son just started racing funny car. And they took the first time out, this was Vegas this last weekend. And they didn't qualify, but they ran a pretty good number. But you know, I've been around a lot of the cars, but I hadn't been around one recently, and he had the box open. Johnny West is helping him on the car. And then I give up. It's like you probably said, I'm not gonna write the software, I won't look in the box. It's amazing what they have.
There's quite a bit there if you're not tuned into it and everything. You just can't fathom what's going on there unless you're totally involved.
Well, it's fantastic, the technology, and I know that you know you're a progressive thinker as far as racing, and you know you're not set. You know, I thought from everything I always knew about you was kind of like Niver. You know, I'm here, but I want to be there. How do I get there? You know, and why does this happen to me, and what can I do to prevent it?
Well, that's how everything progresses, really. You just get an idea and you try it out, and it either works or it doesn't work. You know. But
so, what do you still have racing in your blood? And
oh yeah.
You show up every once in a while to race from time to time.
I still have customers, fuel pump customers, and I stopped at Rex Herbst, who builds the big 4 pumps for these nitro cars. He took over where Waterman was at.
Right.
And he's got everybody's business now, and he's in East Arizona.
Safford.
East of Safford.
Yeah.
And
the Winifsky, I've seen the
we
big pump.
visited yesterday, and he's progressed quite a bit to be where he's at, and I was headed in another direction, and I just went blank for a second, but it'll come to me. But
you're still involved with racing, and you know, with that point, and
oh yeah, I was talking to Rex about he had bought Paula Murphy's funny car.
Okay.
And he had it in a shop there, and it was just collected dust. And why they ended up with it, I don't know, but he ended up, and it had one of my fuel pumps on it. And I said, I don't have any housings left over. I said, can I just buy that pump from you? It's yours. You know? I said, no, I want to pay for it. He said, no, I can't charge you or anybody else for something that isn't my manufacturer. And I said, well, if you're sure, but I'll make it up to him somehow. I mean, I'll only use the housings on it. I basically guarantee the internals aren't what I'm used to looking at. But that was, I said, I've got guys that have had my stuff for 30 years.
And everything's set with it, the tune's all set with it, and
big word.
The tune is all set with your pump, and you know, they just
yeah, and just depending on what class you're in and this and that, everything I've done is nitromethane related. So I never got involved in gasoline or alcohol business. I drank a lot of alcohol.
Well, alcohol's for drinking and gasoline's for washing parts, right? That's what they say. So you come to a point, you moved to nice long time in Texas, and now you're living in Florida.
Panama City Beach, Florida.
And what was the lure of Florida?
For three years now. Yeah,
just a great
we
location.
dodged the hurricanes and everything.
Just not enough excitement in your life.
It's pretty nice down there for the most part, but if one of them things comes through town, you're a sad doggy.
Well, have everything tightened down and ready to leave in a hurry, right?
Yeah. Well, you get in your vehicle and leave.
Right.
But we built a nice home down there and everything, and basically the whole day is a decision process on where do we go happy hour today, you know, that kind of a thing. Or if I got some fuel pump business, I'd take care of it, and then, you know, it's not like, that's priority one, but it's a priority.
Well, there's
you know?
also great car culture there, you know, I mean.
Well, there is, but not in that area.
Yeah, well.
It's kind of, nature,
Need Shelton.
Shelton, I said Sherman, I know it's Shelton. We had a talk about that, and he said, you're gonna find it's a whole lot different culture down here than you're used to. And he was right. There's a lot of hot rods down there, but there's nobody that knows anything about them.
They're a do-it-for-me crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in Dallas, Fort Worth area is just littered with it, and here too. They're everywhere.
All these years of drag racing, did you ever think, how did I get here? Or it's like are you ever like,
It wasn't intentional, it just kind of happened.
the
you
doors
know,
opened
like
up and you walked through the
Like I
door?
say, Bakersfield, I blame everything on Bakersfield. But, and when I started doing it, I decided I liked it quite a bit. Wasn't sure, you know, it's not for everybody.
No? But all the people you've known, the people you've met.
Well, the best part of drag racing is the group of people I've met over the years.
So for another video sometime that will probably be like a little bit more deeply rated, we'd have to get you to talk about Waterbed Fred and all those other people.
I spent a lot of time with that Blue Mac contingency,
Yeah.
and Dale Emery and I shared a house in North Dallas for 4 years while he was crew chief for Beetle, and there were quite a few good stories involved in that deal.
I bet there were.
But yeah, Dale was something else.
Well, great, what a great career. You know, just like,
He was something else. That's all I can say.
well, we really appreciate having you here today. A lot of fun,
My pleasure.
and something I've been looking forward to doing for a long time, is a chance to talk with you. I love the opportunity I have to talk to people. You can tell I'm not afraid to talk, so I'm pretty, shut up.
Well, it is a small world.
Yeah.
Because I talked to Nate Shelton this morning about you, and I didn't catch your name when I came in through the door.
Mhm.
And then I heard you telling Bones.
Mhm.
And then I thought, I'll be damned, that's the guy I'm looking for Saturday.
Well, we got you here.
Yeah, yeah.
We are looking forward to seeing you at the reunion, and thanks for coming to town for this.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you.